very much, and thanks both to Booksmith and to the Coolidge, two of the very best reasons why I feel so lucky to live in Brookline. Absolutely spectacular anchor institutions in Coolidge Corner and Brookline more broadly. And I'd like to give a special welcome to Globe alums and to all the people whose interest meant that we had to move this talk from the Booksmith basement to the Coolidge. Thank you for coming. So I'd like to start with a poll. How many people, please raise your hand, how many people here have some direct or indirect family connection to the Holocaust, whether relatives you lost or who had to leave Europe because of it? How many people? Oh, wow, so that's about a quarter maybe, right? It's so interesting. And then for those people, how many feel some concern that those relatives, those connections could be kind of lost to posterity and that maybe you could have done more to explore or to document their lives? But yeah, many people, and maybe not necessarily Holocaust connected, but just in general, your family history. So I think that's one of the great strengths of this book, is that it devotes, or it describes a more than 30-year quest to do that work and to bring it home. So Judy, before we dig into the book itself, you know, the book recounts a kind of a maximal experience of digging out the Holocaust's effect on one family. What would you say would be like the news you can use for the people, the audience members who are thinking about a more modest effort?
Well, so there's a lot more resources out there now than ever before, even versus 10 years ago. There's so many genealogy databases and things that are quite accessible. I have to say, my husband Sam is the pro at making all these family trees, and but there's also a lot more people to help navigate these things. I should say that I'm incredibly blessed because I was able to travel again and again with my cousin Sam, and that's just a richness that very few people have, because they have a snippet of information or some little overheard story, because people really didn't talk about this when we could have gotten a lot more to work with.
So you just mentioned Sam. I hate to jump ahead, but Sam, who is now 99, and is actually
in 2 weeks.
In 2 weeks, he'll be 99. And he really, we were talking earlier, he really is the hero of the book, while Judy is really the narrator and the storyteller, right? So introduce us to Sam.
So as I tell in the book, and I've been reminded I need to say the title, Jews in the Garden. I met Sam really when I was a young reporter, and I came to their house, he and his wife's house for Passover, and it was the first time I had ever, seen anyone so excited about anything. This was a guy who was a very kind of a quiet guy in the shadows of, family events, and after the meal, he said, "Wait guys, let me show you something. Let me show you where you come from. Kazimierza Wielka, Poland." And first of all, it took me a while to learn to say that, but he jumped up and he's showing these slides, and I've never, he was like a different person. And then I wrote a story about him for the Province Journal a long time ago. And after that, I said, "Hey, if you ever go back to Poland, I'd love to tag along."
And so it began. When was that? Like 85 or something?
No, that was, my first trip with him was in 91, so it was before that.
Okay, so I need to interrupt the flow for just a second to say, Judy and I will chat for maybe like 20 minutes or so. We do have a hard stop at 7 because of the movie that's coming in. I always feel like the best part of these events is your questions. So as we talk, please start thinking of your questions. We're gonna leave a lot of time or comments. We're gonna leave a lot of time for them. And one important announcement, actually two. Alex made a very good point that the book signing will be across the street at Booksmith. The sales will be here right? So you get the book here and then you go across the street for the signing. And then the most important announcement is that the good news is that the New York Times reviewed Jews in the Garden. That's it. The bad news is that there's this gigantic spoiler near the end of the review. So I just would suggest, if you're gonna get the book, don't read the review before you read the book.
That's a daylight news.
Yes, right.
Well, it was reviewed by a guy who's an incredible historian, and he's also a knight. So I think he just thought, I can do whatever I want, I'm a knight.
Yeah. Okay, so back to the very central question. So what is the book, Jews in the Garden? So this is my crack at a summary. A leading crime reporter teams up with her elderly cousin, a Holocaust survivor, to dig out the truth about relatives who were killed not by Nazis, but by Polish partisans. An ugly fact of the sort that is now forbidden to publish by the right-wing Polish government. And, sorry, run-on sentence, sorry, all the Globe people, and to search for one family member believed to have survived. So Judy, can you edit that, or how would you make that better?
There's just two things I would add. One, and that's like the news angle, of course, but two things. One, the team. This guy, Sam, the one that's about to turn 99 and he's still driving in Florida. He wasn't always an easy guy to just, we were not always a tight team. Had a few challenges. So that's one thread of the book. And another is that I actually I feel a very strong connection with Poland. And this is not like an indictment of Poles or they were bad people who did some bad things. But over all these trips, and I have friends there, and we bonded with people who tried to save our family, and it's really a very powerful connection to a place I never would have known if I hadn't done this.
So you went from covering crimes which were individual crimes by individual people against individual people, right up until your first trip with Sam, when you moved to covering what was a mass crime, in fact, possibly the biggest crime ever in the history of humanity, and a place where the ground is literally littered with bones, right? So how did that affect you?
Well, I literally left right on the heels of a big story I was reporting for the Providence Journal about a family that had been killed, a husband, a wife, and an 8-year-old girl. And it was like, not only the state, but like literally it was a national story. Strangely enough, they were killed with a crossbow, but I won't go there. Anyway, people were so affected by the loss of this family. And I even wrote a feature about police officers who were so affected by finding this one child's body. And then I go to Poland, and the enormity is I don't think you ever can get used to it. So then we were chasing the fate of our own relatives, and it was definitely personal. It was not just my day job.
Actually, I hadn't known before reading your book that 10% of the Polish population was Jewish before the Holocaust, right? And was reduced to...
Well, that's part of the double meaning of the title, because Poland was a garden for Jews for hundreds and hundreds of years. It was the first place where Jews got civil rights in Europe above all others. And then, of course, the arc to the people we found that were truly buried in gardens and just unmarked graves.
So, to get a taste of the book, I was thinking that we could read the very vivid opening scene, but honestly, it's pretty excruciating. And so I was wondering if maybe you could just recount the opening scene rather than reading it.
Well, the book opens, and I hope you'll go far beyond that, with a description of this young woman that's the subject of the quest, Henya. She was 16, and she had been with her family in hiding for 18 months in these outbuildings and in this farmhouse. They were guarded harbored by a very brave and compassionate family. And this one night, she didn't join her family that decided to, it was really near the end of the war. Any day they were expecting liberation, and she stayed out in the fields. And her family went inside to be shielded from the weather. And that sets up the next series of events.
Well, and what happens to them?
Well, they were murdered. There was these men moving in formation, military formation, who descended upon the house, and they were forced to go to the attic and jump out the window, and they were shot one by one as they fell. And she was in the fields, and then she disappeared. And that's what I've been trying to find her for a very long time.
So
Thank you,
Judy
Bob.
set out to find her. So I did want to have one very brief reading that I think, I like it, and I think Judy likes it because it conveys the sort of, the just unbelievable frustrations of their quest and the walls that they ran into and the persistence and the courage that they needed. So I call this the pitchfork scene. And could you read that, just a bit of it, and before you do, could you set the scene for us about what you're doing there?
Yes, so we had gone, well, we were still looking for this, the trace of this young woman, not so young at that point, and we were right next door on the next farm from where they had been hiding. I'll just go ahead.
Okay. Yeah.
Sam parked on the road by the farm's entrance. It was a sultry October day. We tromped up the drive, stirring dust and trepidations. At the top of the hill, we found a scene that turned on the soundtrack from Deliverance in my head. Run-down buildings surrounded by a farmyard littered with empty vodka bottles of varying sizes. The barn slouched as if it too had been on a bender. Even the wooden well house in the middle of the barnyard leaned off kilter. "Nobody home," Sam pronounced. Stefan, this was the guy who brought us there, scanned the barnyard as if scoping out an escape route. Sam said, "They'll probably come back soon from the fields for lunch." I had a bad feeling about this. "Maybe we should wait for them off the property," I suggested, thinking of many door knocks I'd made as a reporter that had not gone well. I half expected to see shotguns emerge. Roosters started making a racket, alerting us to the horse-drawn wagon just cresting the hill. The guy holding the reins had bloodshot eyes under a cap askew. I pegged him as a day drinker. Another guy sat in the wagon with a tiny woman in a babushka. Sam called out a greeting in Polish, apologizing for the unannounced visit and asking for a moment of his time. He said that he came from Kazimierza Wielka and was trying to piece together some history. He did not wait for responses, hurrying to put them at ease, particularly the driver, who was squinting at us with smoldering eyes. Without hearing a word of English, I read their body language. No signs of anything hospitable. Sam courteously addressed the old woman frowning at him beneath her sun-bleached babushka. She dismounted, showing torn white stockings under a skirt caked in mud. The other man hopped down from the wagon without a word, deferring to the woman. Sam continued, asking for answers about the Roseniks, saying he understood they had hidden in a house nearby and had a surviving daughter. Before Sam finished the question, the old woman answered with that reflexive mantra, "Nie wiem," I don't know. She waved us away like she was swatting flies. Here we were, right near where the Roseniks hid, and yet amnesia abounded. I watched her frown and turn away. She kept repeating, "Nie wiem, nie." Fat chance she was going to become fat, chatty, and cooperative. It was so frustrating in this place where roosters outnumbered people. Surely back fence chatter abounded. Both Mandetsky and Stefan had told us how much people chewed on old gossip and war stories. but the old woman's shaking head delivered another gut punch to our expectations. Another brick wall. I pulled out my camera and started snapping frames. This scene was worth remembering, particularly the old woman with the Baba Yaga look. My little Instamatic seemed unobtrusive, especially while Sam was talking to the farmers. I was framing shots of the vodka bottles, the well house, the roosters, and the old woman leaning heavily on the horse-drawn cart. Then the wagon driver appeared in the viewfinder. His face darkened like a storm. His cheeks puffed and his mouth puckered. He flamed red. He lunged at me with a pitchfork. I tucked the camera in my pocket and backpedaled. Everyone reacted. The three guys and the old woman all threw their arms trying to restrain the guy. He ranted and reached for me. The old woman, who came up to his waist, held little sway. She was shouting and poking at him, but she could not even reach his swinging arms. He writhed and jabbed the air, yelling at me. Sam shot me a look. He wants your camera. He wants you to erase the picture of him, Sam said. I know, I'm not gonna give him the camera, I said. He's upset about the picture, Sam said. Yeah, that's pretty clear. But did you find out what happened? Was Henya here? They don't know anything, like all the rest. Between the wagon driver's flashing eyes and that pitchfork, I decided to cut our losses. My Nikes did a 180 and I hightailed it down the driveway. The camera would be safer in the car, and so would I. I closed the door, but did not lock it. Good thing. A few minutes later, Sam jogged down the driveway. He hopped in and fired up the engine. Somehow, Stefan, moving awfully fast for a big man, managed to get in the car too, plopping in the back. We sped off, kicking up a cloud of dust. Now I second-guessed myself. Had I ruined our chances of getting information? I had been a benign presence on this trip until now. I might be slowing Sam's progress by always asking him to translate. Maybe they saw Sam as a Pole and he could have charmed these folks. Maybe I put them off, a young American in a jewel-toned Gore-Tex shell, staring suspiciously. We drove in silence. I'm sorry, Sam, I couldn't give my camera to that guy. I hope I didn't ruin everything. Sam didn't say anything until we dropped off Stefan. When we reached the hotel, I started to get out. He said, well, young lady, I froze. Today it is clear, he continued. What's that? I asked. I saw the stubborn look on your face when I asked you for the camera. There was no way you were going to give it. And I thought, today I know you are Rakowsky.
And indeed, like all through the book, it takes so much guts and persistence. And I mean, I felt like part of it was you're a reporter who just can't let go, right? But what else was it?
Well, everyone has been in a more rural setting where people don't want to talk. It's not like it's only Poland, so I don't want to just blame Poles. However, it was infuriating and galling and frustrating. And on the other hand, Sam could walk up to somebody with crow's feet and they tell him something that was like a big revelation that we didn't know about.
And you did find people who knew the truth and would share it, right? So, yeah. Don't want to give away too much. Okay, so Judy also has an excellent op-ed published in USA Today where she draws some relevant points that are relevant to the here and now, here meaning the United States. And you write about the politicization of memory. So how is this story from Poland relevant to us here and now?
Well, first of all, there are memory laws in a lot of countries, and in fact, Germany kind of started this off by saying you can't deny the Holocaust. So it's interesting how we think some things absolutely can't be discussed under any circumstances or expressed. But there's been a rash of them, and Poland now has one as of 5 years ago. But what's kind of catching about it, the book bans and the legislation that's pending or in effect in some states in this country, that basically say you can't teach anything that might make someone feel bad or feel that they were somehow, that someone of their same gender or race committed something, and so they might feel bad if they were to read it. And what I asked in that op-ed is who decides what's going to, you know, what the frames of this content are, and where do we wind up?
That's a big question. And then in terms of the timing of the here and now, the book is coming out at a time of a new wave of Holocaust-related literature, at a time when many of the last survivors and witnesses are dying. So how does this book fit into that context?
Well, I think I can't say it better than Elie Wiesel did, and the U.S. Holocaust Museum tweeted this the other day. He was asked, what happens after all the survivors are gone? And he said, to witness the witnesses makes you a witness. So it's incumbent on all of us to not let this, you know, the enormity of this loss perish. And that's what I really felt when I was, you know, discovering what happened to my relatives. I thought, you know, if no one came back and asked, then we wouldn't know anything. And I feel richer knowing it, even if it's grim and upsetting.
And you did in fact establish some facts.
Oh, a lot, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, well, I think what you're referring to is this gigantic court file that I obtained, and, you know, that established that, you know, 20 people were convicted of killing a family of my relatives, and established the pattern of what was going on. And it's actually one of the best proven cases in Poland that has been written about quite a bit. And it's, you know, as the New York Times review that you're not going to read yet says, what I'm raising here is very well established and well known by academics. This is not like a subject of debate. It's what we do with that knowledge.
So I have a couple more questions that I really, really want to ask, and then we will go to audience questions, so do be thinking of them. Okay, so looking ahead, you're going to Poland soon. What's the state of play there?
Don't tell them I'm coming.
Oh, really? I don't think they're listening. So, and Sam's about to be 99. What is he saying these days? And then also I was thinking, is this book going to be translated into Polish? And if it is, will it be banned?
That's hard to know, but so far it's going to be translated into Russian, Italian, and Spanish.
Great.
And no Polish publishers have held up their hand. But we are invited by the mayor of my family's hometown to come to this celebration in September. They're honoring my cousin Sam. He's not able to travel there, so we're representing him, and we have an invitation, so we'll see what happens.
So I found myself thinking, as I read Jews in the Garden, about the classic Solzhenitsyn line that maybe many people know, about how the line between good and evil isn't, actually wait, I have it. The line separating good and evil passes not through states, nor between classes, nor between political parties either, but right through every human heart and through all human hearts. This line shifts inside us. It oscillates with the years. And so I was thinking about that and thinking about the story from the Polish point of view. And I totally don't condone that they have barred people from telling the truth about Polish complicity in Jewish deaths. At the same time, you can kind of see how you wrote something about how they think they have a right to national pride or something like that, right? So it's connected to the debate that we're having in the States right now about how we have to tell both the bad and the good side of history, but where that balance is can be quite difficult to determine. So what do you think the right response is to sort of thorny question.
Well, I think all the lawyers in the room might agree with me that to make a law against telling the truth is problematic.
Yes, we all agree.
Maybe not just the lawyers. But the overarching point that I really want to make here is that we have to remember our compassion. And if we decide that, we can suppress the truth about the loss of people, then that's really problematic. Now, I understand, and I really want to make the point that Poland went through the longest occupation of any country. You reported from Moscow, you know what a totalitarian system is like and how the version of history already had been totally hijacked. But I think that we have to at least try to get back to some sense of why it matters. Facts matter. Yeah.
True. Okay, questions. Alex, is there a mic in the audience? Or how shall we do this?
Talk loud.
This is not a shy bunch. I don't know.
Yeah, I
don't know if anyone needs a
Okay.
microphone.
Yeah. Please raise your hand if you have a question or a comment.
I have a question. Are you eligible for Polish citizenship?
No.
Ah,
Poland wasn't a country for 150 years, and my grandfather left in 1913 to escape conscription by the Tsar. So they don't really, the borders move so much. I wish I would have, the cartographers made money, I'm sure.
If you were eligible, would you want it?
I don't know, that's a tough one. I know a lot of German Jews have had that
Yeah.
ambivalence. If you could go faster through passport control, though.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Hang on, the mic is coming.
So I'm really looking forward to reading the book, Judy. So you were motivated to research this by meeting this cousin Sam, who sounds like he's a real character. Was there something else in your background that, why were you so driven to uncover this story?
I think I need a couch. I don't know, I think part of it was that I grew up in a small town in Ohio, and I do tell this anecdote in the book that in 5th grade, my teacher asked, what's your background? How did you, where did your family come from? And most of the kids just shrugged, they had no idea. And that was the achievement of the melting pot, right? We're all just gonna be Americans, and that's what we grew up on. And that was pretty well achieved in my experience. But the authenticity of these relatives that had been through amazing experiences was very captivating as well.
So hearing from them, were they telling about their experiences?
It's just, so my cousin Sam's wife is Israeli, and they went through another incredible period of history. And my mother wasn't Jewish. She became Jewish when she married my father. So I think that was part of my drive to, know more about that.
And you got a lot of, you don't look Jewish.
Sure did. I had $1 for every one of those.
Yeah. So Alex has the mic, and she is in control of the mic. So if you have a question or comment, just raise your hand and get her attention. Yeah.
So the farmers that don't want to talk to you, to me, it makes me think that they were complicit. You comment on that?
I don't know that people were actually complicit as much as it was a lot safer. And I think we've all been in groups where it's a lot safer just to keep your mouth shut. It's sort of a conspiracy of silence is a phrase I use.
I mean, complicit suggests that they knew what was going on, or they knew what had happened, or they supported it, right?
Well, I think really one thing you have to understand is that in Poland, everyone was a partisan. Like, you can't find anyone that wasn't. It was just pervasive. Everyone was in the underground. Everyone was resisting the occupation. It went on for so long. And so there's a real need culturally, psychologically for heroes. And so to have anyone say that the Partisans did anything bad, it just goes against that grain. And we've definitely experienced that in many, many places. Many people.
That makes sense. Who has the mic?
I'm like, I know that you said that there's gonna be a celebration for your, I'm right up here.
Oh, sorry.
A celebration for, the family, or for Sammy coming up. Are there a lot of other activities that take place yearly in Poland as a way of remembrance?
So there was for a while a very strong resurgence, if you will, celebration of Jewish culture, and that was better funded, at least, before this current government took power in 2015. So this is also, we're being welcomed as part of that, but there really aren't Jews in the area where we came from, and he's being celebrated as the last survivor, last Jew from the whole area. And to give you some context, in the county where my family hometown lies, there were 30,000 Jews before the war, and after the war, many who survived in the Soviet Union, there were 300. And so they're just, you know, in some of the cities, in Warsaw, Krakow, and Wrocław, there are communities, and there's, you know, like some resurgence. They use the phrase people of Jewish origin, because, you know, there's just been a lot of people found out they were Jewish when a parent was on their deathbed and found out that, you know, you were a child that we kept for people and you were born Jewish. Maybe more than you wanted.
And then Alex, we have quite a few down here too. Okay.
Is the spoiler in the New York Times article the answer to whether or not you found the young woman?
Yes.
Okay, I won't ask.
Say no more, please. Yeah. Yes, we have a whole bunch down here. Alex is in charge.
Hi. There is a very strong group of intellectuals and artists in Poland, and Poland itself before the war had a very strong, despite all the caricatures of Poles by Americans, had a very high culture. And I'm interested in who the novelists, I just looked one up on my phone, sorry to have looked like I was distracted, but Olga Tokarczuk, who wrote a book about the bones
Yes.
I thought she was Belarusian.
Yeah.
in the land.
She won a Nobel Prize, yeah.
Yeah, and there are filmmakers and novelists, other novelists and academics and so on. What is the effect of their work? And have they gone underground? Have they gone to other places? I'm sure there are different stories there, but what's the overall sense you have of a kind of counter narrative?
So I don't know of a particular attack on those artists. Lately it has been targeted on the funding of academics who are doing what they call the New School of Holocaust Research. And that has, you know, there have been headlines around the globe about that. It's easier to score quick political points that way. And, you know, this is a politicization of history, and I just don't know. The other big headline grabber was how the portrayals of historic events was changed on Wikipedia. So it's like the battle of the Wikipedia accounts. I just don't know of any specific cases involving the arts.
Hi, two questions. One, Is there any explanation of the partisan behavior, given that they were also anti-fascist, I assume? I can imagine a couple. The other thing is that the fact that you're being invited back for the celebration, does it signal any kind of local thawing of this, or is it just more of an aberration?
Good questions, Eric. So, for one thing, the underground in Poland during the war is a vast umbrella of organizations. The Home Army is credited in giving the Allies some incredible aid. There was a lot of great work that went on. There were even some Jewish partisans, not really that many, unfortunately, but there were also some branches or groups that were quite aligned with the Nazis' goals and what they were trying to accomplish. The Endetia is one I had to go deep into this stuff in order to say anything. And some were quite aligned with the communists. And then there was back and forth and internal fighting and everything. So I can only say it was anti-Semitism and a desire for Jewish possessions and property that drove some of those killings. And what was the second part?
Oh, just the Israeli thawing
Oh.
the invitation.
So I've been trying to get a beat on that for personal reasons, since we're going. But I do think that it's kind of like in this country, think about what happens on a local level versus a state level versus a federal level. The mayor is very popular in the town that, where they've invited us, and he defeated the guy from the other party, and he seems to be pretty confident that nobody's gonna mess with him. So I'm gonna go with that.
You better behave.
Wear a flak jacket.
Yeah.
Can I come to you, sir?
Hi. I was just wondering if Sam has read the book, and if he has, what was his reaction?
Great question. Sam said he read it 3 times last week alone. It's a little bit like there's this big study, I don't know if you know about it, Night Without End. It's this very authoritative look at all of the occurrences of what I'm talking about. And he went to the chapter on his home county and said, "Did you see my dad's name's in there?" So he does like the attention. No, he really likes it. He said, "Sometimes you were positive, sometimes you were not. You were negative about me, but I still like it."
He sounds like a bit of a pain in the butt.
He's amazing and
Yes, and, yeah.
Hi, thanks for writing this. I'm wondering if when you grow up, you have a sense of Jewish identity, given you were, a mixed family when you were little.
oh, when I was little?
Yeah, when you were little.
Oh, we
Or as a
were
teenager.
Jewish. We were Reformed, but we were, my father was on the board of the synagogue, my mother was the head of the sisterhood. We're definitely Jewish, but you know how Jews judge each other. You're not Jewish enough for anybody.
I grew up in Akron, Ohio, and my parents were very good friends with Sam and Ron. So I knew them growing
That's
up,
wonderful.
and I never knew their story. Did you grow up in Akron?
No, Lima.
That's a really small town. We were big compared to Lima. But I never knew his story, and I didn't know him very well. I knew his wife a little better because she was always more chatty, I think. When I read the article in the Globe, I was blown away by it. I started reading Sam Ron, and I looked at the picture, and I'm like, this has, and then he said Ohio, and I said, that's it. This is clearly the same person. So it was very, it was so interesting to me. I did not know his story. I'm sure my parents did, but they didn't. I left after college, and as an adult, I just. Is she still alive?
Oh yeah.
She is too. So
Yeah.
how old is she?
We're going to visit next week.
Oh, that's so great.
He's 98 going on 99, and she's, I don't know, 5 years younger.
Wow.
He gets a lot of the limelight, so, It's kind of tough for her.
Yeah, that's very exciting. Maybe I'll give you my parents' names afterwards.
I just
And
love,
pass
like-
on. She passed away like 6 years ago, my mom, so, but I think that they'll remember her for sure. They were good friends.
Feels like such a great revenge that he lived for so long, you know?
Thank you for this. The book, I read through the article, long article in the Globe. It was an amazing reading, and I'm looking forward to reading the book too. So
Thank you.
It's also so interesting, the people you know and you never know the backstory of.
Well, they didn't talk about it, because as he said when I first interviewed him, he said, I didn't think anyone wanted to know.
You mentioned that when you were in 5th grade, that the teacher asked if you knew where you came from, and most kids didn't. Did you know where your family came from, and was that kind of always in the back of your mind, and then it was triggered by Sam? And also, did you know Sam growing up, or how did you connect to him?
Thank you, great questions. So I piped up in class and said, I'm of Polish Jewish descent. And then, and this is in the book, and then, you know, after school, in the carpool, I said it again. I wasn't a very quiet kid. And she said, you're fibbing. Everybody knows all Poles are Catholic. Why would you say that? So that's why I remembered it. And I'm sorry, what was the second?
Do you know Sam growing up?
Oh, so Sam, his story just keeps going. After the war, he didn't want to go in a DP camp, so he became part of the Brucha, and they,
What's the book?
the Brucha was an organization that basically smuggled Jewish orphans to Palestine because they didn't have any papers and they didn't have anywhere to go, and they didn't want to go behind barbed wire again. So he jumped on one of those ships and went to what we now know of as Israel, and he was on a kibbutz. He met Sam, who his story just keeps going. He was guarding an outpost in the Negev, and he got shot. And they evacuated him with what's known as the first flight of an Israeli Air Force. It was a mail plane. So he's recovering, and he meets Bila, and this is and anyway, so they got married, and they both changed their last names, and he became Sam Ron. Ron is joy in Hebrew, and they cast off all memories of Europe, and you know, and then they were going back and forth to Ohio and Israel because both of their parents with competing concerns. This is more than you wanted to know, isn't it? And so they didn't settle in Ohio till I think like the mid-50s. I wasn't born yet, but anyway, he really wasn't around when I was growing up. I saw him in at big family gatherings. But you know, that's when you're a little kid, you don't really pay attention.
To grown-ups, yeah.
Thank you.
I have a question up here. As you proceeded on your research, what did you find out that just surprised you the most? And what preconceptions did you have that you found out were most misguided?
Interesting.
I'd like to go back down here to the I mean, what's surprising the most is just the enormity of the loss and the papering over of a lot of these stories. We are in this country where we have open courts, and you know, you think you can go and see a trial. I covered a lot of trials. You know, you can go get court papers, but in a place where nothing is public, I saw how gossip and, you know, and innuendo can just rule. And that was really stunning. And I think that's what, drives me to this day, to really think that people should be able to get access to facts. Misconceptions. I think what I really enjoyed learning was about you know, more about what the whole complete story of Poland, and you know, and really appreciating thousands of years of history that, you know, Jews were a part of, my family was a part of.
Did you feel like you had a misconception of Poles as more like villains than they were when you knew them as real people? Villains in this story, at least? Like,
I don't know if villains or just not really callous disregard more for what we were and where, you know, this whole culture and civilization that's gone.
I have a question.
wait, there's the mic is going there, and then, yeah.
I don't think Bob Peabody needs a microphone.
Real quick question up here, which is one over to your, I am, right. So I'm wondering, you know, what your outreach is to the Polish American community in writing this book, because you know, on the one hand, you know, I fear, and I'm not making any assumptions about who's here in the audience, though I would venture to guess that a vast majority of us are Jewish or Jewish affiliated, and wondering, you know, in terms of taking this book to reach a broader audience, you know, what your plans are and thoughts for that. And then thinking about going back to Poland, yes, that's important, but there's an enormous Polish American, not Jewish community here in the United States, and wondering what your experience and thoughts are about reaching out and having this be a moment for dialogue and growth and learning.
I'm very open to it.
Especially in the Midwest, right? Yeah. Americans.
I think there's more Poles in Chicago than in Warsaw.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, question coming down here. And I will warn you that we have just 7 minutes left. So if you have a burning question, raise your hand high.
I'll try to be brief. No.
Okay. Yeah.
Judy, first of all, congratulations. It's a great triumph and a lot of work, I know, on your part. I'm curious about the journey you took to write the book. Because you said when you went with Sam to your hometown, or at least the region, the county, you were a reporter for the Providence Journal, and not to date you, but that was some years ago. Tell us how you got from A to B to C to D until to here today. When did you want to start writing the book? When did you have the idea in mind? When did you really dig into the research? How many trips did you take? I'm just curious the journey you took.
Some of that's in the book, Bob. Just so the really striking thing for me was this, you know, like I said, I reported on a lot of crimes, covered a lot of trials, some involving you. But this was so personal, and when it came to writing it, so it was, you know, when it came to writing it, I had a lot of stuff on the cutting room floor that put myself in the book. And I was brought up as an old-fashioned journalist, you know, you're not in the story at all.
No first person.
No first person. The I word is something you're allergic to. But I wrestled with this endlessly, and in many writing groups, and people who are in this room may remember, I struggled with that. But I tried to get the balance, if you will, because I found that I had to be in the story because most of us cannot really imagine what my cousin Sam lived through. I mean, we try to think about what would we have done, could we have lived, you know, 4 Nazi camps, a death march, on and on. And so that's where I landed on, you know, putting myself in the story and sort of reacting to him and reacting to things that happen in order to kind of be a friend to the reader. Is that enough?
I said to Judy, it felt like she had a little bit of a Nick Carraway role, like in The Great Gatsby. Like he was the sort of the great big central character, and she brought him to us in a way that we could understand. Yeah. Okay, a couple more questions.
So
yeah.
I think I'm an official Judy Rakowsky groupie now.
It's a big group.
Having followed you to Provincetown and now to Coolidge Corner. And I thought maybe people who were here who weren't at the Provincetown Film Festival might want to hear a little bit about the documentary that Sam was in and that you were were at, and your experience at that film festival.
Thank you so much. Yeah, there's a short documentary of 20 minutes called Jack and Sam, and it has some Ohio in it. So my cousin was in this camp named Pionki, not a well-known camp, and it was a lot of very, you know, he was shoveling coal around the clock, and this guy next to him, this buddy Jack, you know, they both wound up surviving. He didn't know what happened to Jack. Jack escaped in the forest, and Sam survived another way. Anyway, it was a year ago March, I was at a gala for the U.S. Holocaust Museum in Florida, and my cousin Sam at 97 was speaking from the dais and telling his story, and this guy Jack was in the audience. And all these years apart, and he's like, I know that guy. He's my brother. And so they had this glorious reunion, and they are now buddies in South Florida. And the really great thing is that they've gone and talked, you know, Sam's talked to students forever, and now they've gone to some high schools together and said, you know, you guys, we're not gonna be around too much longer. You've got to pick up the baton, and you know, there's just too much hate. It's a simple message, but it's pretty powerful coming from them.
Where can you see the documentary?
Yeah. Question is, where can you see the documentary?
I mean, I think it's gonna be, if you wanna go to Indianapolis, I think it's gonna be there.
Yeah, YouTube. What is it, Jack and Sam?
Jack and Sam. I'm in touch with the director, and you can Google it. I think it pops, but the Indianapolis showing is gonna be the first one where it could qualify for awards. And then it's gonna be in Florida sometime in the next couple months.
Great, thank you. So we have to wrap up. Let me recap the instructions. Sales are downstairs in the lobby?
Downstairs in the lobby.
Downstairs in the lobby. Signing, however, so do not mob Judy in the lobby. Let her go over to Booksmith, where there will be signing. And any other events or anything you want to let people know about? Publications?
I'm gonna be in Boise next month. This is a Boston audience, isn't it?
Could be a lot of people there who relate to the farmers in the story. So huge thanks to everyone for coming, and please join me in congratulating Judy on just a big
anecdotes, and I just want to thank you for all the support. And yes, it finally is a book.